we are never truly lost. Well, okay, sure, maybe we get turned around for a few days in the woods, where life just feels like it's getting the best of us, and everything's going wrong. And I'm Mike Martin, and I've stood right where you're standing, lost, beaten down, like nothing's ever gonna change. And that's why I built this camp. And that's why I'm inviting you to join me and all the members of this wild community. Because you know what, friend? It does get better. So come along with me into the wild and let me show you this awesome, unique skill set that lays within inside of you. With help from the land, we're gonna unlock the steward that's inside each and every one of us that will lead the way out of the darkness and into healing. Here at the Camp of Healing on Project Mindfully Outdoors.
To waste or discard something is to go against the way of the soul. There is nothing on this earth, not a tree, an animal, or even another human being, that was put here to be destroyed for our convenience. Instead, each of them are placed here to bring beauty to our lives and enrich the story that we're living. To hold these words within your heart is to always be reminded to take only the smallest amounts that is truly needed in order to survive. But these words also help us to remember that we must give back in order to return and keep the circle of life in balance, because it's this act of give and take that is the path to harmony in its truest form. If you find yourself ever feeling unhappy with the things that surround you, reflect upon those things that you have and ask yourself, is the feeling of discontentment rooted within some sort of unbalance within that natural order? If this is the case, you must take a look within and ask yourself, what more can you offer in order to replenish that which you've taken? Since you cannot expect a fire to continue to give off flame if you do not replace the wood that has been burnt. And the same thing holds true within the relationships that we hold the closest to us. So we must allow ourselves to be on both sides of the coin, to be not only the fire which burns the wood to give off heat and light throughout the night, but also to be the hand which offers the replenishment of the wood that has been burnt.
Today's episode of Project Mindfully Outdoors is brought to you by our friends at MyMedic, the leaders in first aid readiness. And if you swing over to mymedic.com and use promo code PROJECTOUTDOORS15, you'll save 15% on your entire order. So go out, buy now, be prepared, That way you'll survive and live later in the event that you have a crisis that comes up while you're on the trails. That's mymedic.com and promo code PROJECTOUTDOORS15. Hey, everybody. Welcome to Project Mindfully Outdoors, the podcast, and the launch of season number 5. That is something that feels very epic to me. The fact that here we are for a 5th go-around of the podcast, and for that, none of it would be possible without you guys. So I have to start this episode out by expressing my gratitude and my thanks to you. Now, going forward through season 5, I'm going to set this up a little bit because it's going to be something very special. Something that I feel is going to make this the greatest season yet, because it's going to be jam-packed with special meditations that were written on the trails throughout the Ohio Valley and beyond. Things that I've experienced and tapped into that I feel can help us along our journey. And if you swing over to projectmindfully.outdoors.com, you can follow along in the Wilderness Journal, which is something that I started up during the break in order to document and share with you the experiences and the takeaways, and really offer some special analysis of what a day in the backcountry, what an experience can really do for each of us. But that doesn't mean that we're going to get away from the things that really made this podcast great for the first 4 seasons. And one of those aspects is the campfire sessions. So we're definitely going to be sitting around the campfire throughout season 5, learning and listening and meeting some of the greatest thinkers and leaders that today's world has to offer, with the hope that it gives you some special tool or wisdom that you can apply to your journey. And that gets into today's episode, because there's a lot to talk about at the campfire. Now, a few months ago, I had the opportunity to sit down with my guest today and record a conversation for his podcast, which is called The Lots Project. There's lots to talk about in that show with the host, Brian, who's a really great guy. And I'll tell you, he's living an experience that is helping many people out there. And I think that in this conversation, he's going to have a little something that helps you in order to bridge that gap from the everyday world to the backcountry and really fine-tune the idea of a wild wilderness experience, as well as wilderness meditation that is very tangible and something that is out there for everybody. So, without a further ado, I give you my conversation with Brian from the Lots Project. This portion of Project Mindfully Outdoors is brought to you by our friends at MSR, Mountain Safety Research, and the makers of the Pocket Rocket Stove. This is the stove that I carry with me on all my backcountry adventures.
because we've all got to have a way to boil water and prepare food. And this amazing lightweight stove system is exactly what you're looking for. And if you swing over to the show notes, you'll find a link to not only the Pocket Rocket, but also all the full line of MSR products. So click the link in the show notes and pick up your Pocket Rocket stove today.
All right, so it's been a couple of weeks since we've had the opportunity to sit down and kind of talk a little bit. So I know you just got back from an awesome adventure. Let me hear a little bit about that.
Yeah, so we've been sitting down here in Tennessee, getting ready to do some work for a buddy on some property down here. But we had to take care of getting our residency because we sold our property in Minnesota, and we don't have any property, so we don't really have a home address or anything. So in order to have a driver's license and vehicle registrations and things like that, you need a residency. So South Dakota is one of a couple states that has a mechanism where nomads or military members or traveling nurses or, a variety of people that wouldn't have a home address, pilots, commercial pilots a lot of times. So you can go and get a personal mailbox, which gives you an address, and there's a process you can go through to get a driver's license and register your vehicles in South Dakota. But part of the process, you actually have to go and spend one night there to get your driver's license. So we were in Minnesota when we took off, and the plan was to go there when we left and get this taken care of immediately. But we didn't sell our house before we took off. We just up and ran without selling the house. And so we had to skip that because you can't have any property somewhere else, and we hadn't sold our house yet. So we kind of wandered for the winter and made our way back up there and got everything taken care of. But we took 3 weeks to do it. We spent a week in South Dakota, actually a little over a week, I think 8 days. With some of it we spent with my wife's parents, my in-laws. They camped with us for a while. We stopped at all hip camps along the way. Variety of different kinds, everything from just like an unmanned pasture field to a really cool camp in South Dakota we stayed at that I got to really interact with the owner. Got to do some rock hunting in a gravel pit in western South Dakota, which was really cool. Brought some home and sent them off today to a buddy of mine. My coffee roaster actually does rock polishing, things like that. On a big scale. He's out in Seattle and tumbles rocks he finds on the beach there in the bays. And so he said, yeah, dude, I can handle up to like softball size. So I got some pretty crazy agates I picked up in this rock quarry. I literally mailed rocks in the mail today to a dude. It was like a box of rocks. So we did that. Man, it was a great trip. We had a shit ton of things go sideways on the way back, but we made it home. I just did an episode of my podcast Monday night. My wife and I did a recap of the trip. It was like an hour and a half, and we talked about all the stops we made and all the crazy stuff on the way home that was happening that we just felt so beat up, but so relieved when we pulled back into Tennessee. I call it home. I guess I refer to it as home because we left here and we were coming back here. So I guess it's a good place to sit down and do a lot of repairs. And so that's what's on the horizon now.
That's cool. That's quite the adventure. That's kind of the way my summer has been, except, rooted within where I'm at. So just kind of working within the area, exploring, getting to experience new things. And I feel like that's something that, as we go through our daily lives within the concrete world, being able to get out and explore these things and have these adventures, whatever the scale is so important. It really helps to tame that burnout feeling, because life gets grueling. So to be able to step out and just enjoy nature, facing, whatever adversities come up, you look at it and you go, man, it's not that big a deal. Like we talked about before, a bad day when your tire goes and pops is a lot less worrisome than, people that came on the trail before us, where a bad day was probably getting eaten by a bear.
Well, right. And that was kind of like one of the stops we had. It was a super long drive. It was one of the longest drives of our trip. Like, we limit our traveling days to like 200 miles, just in case stuff goes sideways. We like extra time. We like to be able to take our time in the morning and take our time when we get there in the evening setting up, especially if it's going to be an overnight. We don't like to tax it 2 days in a row. And we really broke our own rules on this trip because it was so many miles. We would often travel one day. Like, our favorite way to do it is travel on a Saturday and then spend a week wherever we are. And that gives us actually what you're talking about, is time to get outside, time to explore where we're at around what we have to do anyway. We have to make content. My wife has to work her full-time job during the week, things like that. But when we only do travel and then move like day after day after day, basically we set up our trailer and then we sit down because we're tired. We traveled all day. And then you do it again. We ended up traveling 4 days in a row on this trip. And then after we spent some time in South Dakota, we ended up traveling 5 days in a row the next streak. And we were exhausted. And towards the end of that, we had a super long trip. We were staying at it was a horse or a cattle ranch in Oklahoma, in the very northeast of Oklahoma, corner of Oklahoma. And like, there was no cell signal there. The GPS took us to the wrong spot, and it was after one of our longest mile treks. And the owner, she tried her best, but like limited cell service and this and that. Finally, we got hooked up. We got to the pasture we were staying in, and we pulled in and we dinged up our stabilizer on the back of the camper. And then we were taking a turn in the field, and we took a turn too tight, and it popped a hole in one of the lights on the side of the camper. And I'm just like watching this stuff happen, losing my mind, because it's after this really long, exhausting travel day. And then I'm setting up the camper, and I got a bottle of or a can of off in my hand, like the long cylinder. And I slipped on I tripped on a tuft of grass, and it was just a cow pasture we were in. And I landed on the side of the camper with the edge of that can right on the palm of my hand, and it popped a hole through the siding. And it was like a 22 went off. It was like, pop. And I'm like, I looked down at it, and there was this huge smiley face sideways in the camper. And I'm like, all right, well, that's how this day is going to go. I walked down the road out in the middle of Oklahoma. It was absolutely gorgeous. Like, it was cow pastures. I really sat there and realized that, I was pissed. I was like, this hip camp sucks. Fuck this shit. I'm sorry about the language, man. But I was like, man, this is bullshit. And then I calmed down and I said, it's my bad day. This isn't her fault. Like, she had nothing to do with the fact I had no signal, that I went long. I busted my shit up. And I just enjoyed her property at that point, and it was okay. And I'll fix it when we got back. Like, that's on my list. That's content, man. Like, I have to look at it like everything I have to do is content. I can film it and put it on YouTube and have more content. So
it's content
as long
that's
as I make it
back, the hard way. Exactly. And I think that really speaks to like the perspective that we need to really learn how to foster in order to have more of a successful life, is this ability to not only pivot, and roll with the punches, but also be able to enjoy the surroundings. As content creators, we're always like, man, whatever's going on right now, we can just pick up and record, and we got content. We look at it, and then when we're doing the editing, we look back and we laugh, right?
What was I doing? Why did I think this was going to be good?
Yeah, right. Sure. I mean, in the moment, it sucks, especially when you're going through a situation
a lot of times it's really hard to express what you're actually feeling because no one's experienced the whole culmination of that. No one, right. I mean, unless it is totally live 24/7, no one rode in that car with me for 6 hours. No one got frustrated when the maps changed in the middle of a highway and took us down like a dirt road. And I have a 35-foot travel trailer behind my truck. Like no one experienced all that stuff. So for me to like pull out a camera and like lose my mind in a field because I had a bad day, it doesn't hold water. I mean, it's like, it's got shock content or whatever it is, but I try to stay away from that stuff because no one's really feeling that. Like I could tell that story on my show, but as far as like a social media post and like that daily recording stuff, you got to do it all. It's like all or nothing unless the emotion isn't there.
Exactly. I feel like, there's a lot of events that we go through that kind of write their own story. I go through a lot when I'm out fishing. And in my head, this is the way it's gonna play out. But in hindsight, when I go through and actually live the experience, it's something totally different. And there's this piece that I started writing today that I think was really beautiful and speaks to this sort of theme, is basically within the medicine and the example of the moose. You learn to exist and accept whatever it is that's going on based off the fact that you can look at a moose and how huge they are, right? I'm sure it didn't just wake up one day and say, okay, there's nowhere for me to really hide, so I just got to be cool with this. I can imagine that it came through evolution, that they got to this point where not only are they cool with it, but they've thrived and they've made it their own, obviously, because they're still here for us to enjoy. But the approach that I went with the piece I was writing is this idea how they walk around with like almost that goofy smile on their face all the time and being this gentle giant, based off the fact that they have had to learn how to cope with whatever it is they encounter, based off the fact that they don't have that luxury that even we as people have to go hide behind something. They just got to take it all on the chin and adapt and do the best that they can with it, and make, honestly, just celebrate it and make the most of it. Be happy.
Do you have moose where you are?
I do not.
Have you been around them at all? Like
I have never had. No, I've never had the luxury of actually encountering one. So
in Minnesota, there used to be a lot of moose, and they were kind of quite a ways south. The wolf population got out of control because they protected them, and they overpopulated. They killed all the young moose and all the young deer and elk and whatever. I don't think there were elk, actually, but at one time I think there were, but not at this point. And anyway, so the moose really died back, and they really went north, and they weren't in my area. I was like very central Minnesota, but there was one male moose that lived in a town like 15 miles from me, 12 miles from me. And it just lived there. And they think that it was like a young male during the rut that took off looking to score, went in the wrong direction, got separated, then just wandered south and got lost and ended up out of its range. And it just chills. Like he's just around. Everybody knows that dude's just like around. There's no females for him to mate with. There's no other moose around. He's just like hanging out in town.
And that, that really speaks to a lot of us, because we go through we go through what our life is, right? And then we hit these moments that we end up completely lost, and we just got to kind of chill in the moment and learn how to not only pivot and survive, but really how to make the most of it and make it really our reality so we can claim our life back.
So I think I talked to you when you were on my show about getting outside, like when I would go out and grounding and be barefoot outside and really having that connection. Over the last 3 weeks when we were on that trip, and since we've been back a little bit before, but really intentionally towards on our trip, I've been taking time at night. I have some chores I do outside, and then I just stand barefoot at night, whatever, in the drizzle, in the rain, in the nice, in the hot, it doesn't matter. And I've been trying to reorganize what I'm doing as far as my brand and everything, like just because it's my life. Like this, what I'm doing social media wise is just my life. And so I was trying to reorganize my life and my brand and what I'm focusing on. And I was really taking a lot of guidance through those 5 and 10 minute grounding sessions outside before bed, and really intentionally thinking about it. And things became clearer a lot quicker than when I was trying to think about it while I was distracted, while I was working, while I was walking the dogs, when I could really slow down and be in that moment and think about it. And it wouldn't really come to me then. It would be more the next day after I slept on it and really just kind of let it sink in there in the moment out at night.
It gets, it reminds me a lot of the practices that I do in the morning. I get up a couple hours before I've got to actually start the day. I'll pull out the journal. I'll write a little bit. I'll do some meditation. And just, I've got this little routine that as I go through and I check the boxes, it really brings a lot of clarity, and it kind of opens up the idea of actually winning and making a successful sort of day out of whatever it is. And I feel process, it also redefined, my work as far as what I do with the project and the direction that it heads in. Because, when it boils down to it, if you're authentically in this space of content creation, expression, and really even just living, no matter what it is that you do, it comes off of that ability to do it with an authenticity. And in order to channel that authenticity, you've really got to be able to know and understand yourself, and then you begin to express that. You let that come out. And I feel like, that's where a lot of the real worthwhile content ends up coming out of.
You were talking about being authentic, and I happened to be scrolling through Facebook after I got back from doing a bunch of errands today, and I saw this meme that popped up, and it was talking about something about an art class, and somebody was telling a story about an art class they were in, and one of the students in the class brought in their portfolio, and it was in like mixed media, and it was like all feathers, peacock feathers and sparkles and all this stuff. And the teacher, after all the criticism, the teacher was like, I don't like it. I don't like it at all. It's just not my thing. I'll never appreciate it the way you will. But I don't hate it. And I really think that you need to express yourself enough to make the people that don't like it hate it. Make them hate that you like it so much and they don't like it. And it was kind of like this whole long drawn out story. And that was kind of the gist of it was, don't adjust to other people, because they'll never like you as much as you like you when you are just full blast you.
And that gets back to that, the moose medicine that we were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
There's just that big giant space that they've had to grow into and adapt to. And I feel like, they stand at the trailhead of that kind of exploration, not so much as a guardian, but more as kind of like, exactly, more like the map, here I am, this could be you too. And if you take that challenge and you follow it through, I feel like at the end you get rewarded with that same kind of goofy smile that they walk around with.
Yeah, I got one of those hair on your neck moments the other day. I was on TSP, and somebody emailed or sent me a message on one of the platforms after and said that I made them feel like they were doing the right thing, like that it was okay that they were doing what they wanted to do, because I was so comfortable with what I was doing that it was all right. And I was like, okay, well, that makes it worth it. That makes all the stuff you do for no return worth it when you get those messages, for sure.
Oh, definitely. And I think that it really it makes you not only feel good about it, but it also reminds you that life is a unique experience. There is no one set track that we get taught in school. Hey, you're supposed to do this, you're supposed to do that, and then you die. But what about all those gaps in between? And
What if I
I
don't
feel
want to
like
do that stuff?
exactly, and I feel like that's where having a conversation with a guy that travels around and lives the nomad lifestyle is one of those like shining examples of that. And even it doesn't have to be on that level. It could be somebody that's got the typical 9 to 5 job. What a conversation like this does is it says to you, hey, regardless of what your circumstances are, you still have the freedom to fill all those gaps in between point A and point B.
Oh yeah, I mean, you get up and you intentionally do, you should at least intentionally do everything in your day. So I understand that people have to go to work. Like, I understand there's a necessity to pay the bills. If you can figure out how to not do that, then you get to choose to tell your boss to go screw. But maybe you can't do that. So that time's occupied, but they don't occupy your time when you punch out, or they shouldn't at least. I'm not good at that. I'm a 24/7 guy when it comes to a job, whether that's my own or a job for somebody else. Whether I'm on the clock or not, it's always spinning in my head. If I did the right thing, if there's more I have to do, is everything going right when I'm not there? All that shit, not good. That's why working for myself, when it's beneficial for me to think about it 24/7, is great. If you're that type of person, being an entrepreneur might be the only exit for you, because like you can't let a job occupy your time when it's your intentional time. Like, you're doing that job for a paycheck. Let it be that, and intentionally choose what you do with the rest of your time in that day. You only get so much of it. I had a question on my podcast the other day, was what's your prized possession, your most prized possession? I just downsized from 35-acre homestead into a travel trailer and a truck. I don't have any prized possessions. Like, I went through all my shit, threw it all away. My prized possession, my answer was time, because I don't know how much I have of it, and I only have so much of it, and it's only so much in a day, and I could have to sleep to rest. So that limits me. My most prized possession is time, and whether I have to trade some of that to a job for money to put gas in my vehicle to pull my trailer, I'll go ahead and do that. Like, I don't want to, but if I have to trade some of that time, but when I'm not there, I got to be intentionally spending that time doing something that serves me, because that's all it's what it's about, man.
See, I love the message that Seneca shared and left with us about exactly that. So often we get wrapped up and we just completely forget about how important time is. We put that value on the dollar bill. We become such misers with where we're spending our money at, but our time we throw away freely. In the concrete world, that's the way the wheels turn. That's what you're taught. It's all about production. Put that money in your pocket, run out to the store and spend it. And then at the end, when, say the unfortunate incident, you get diagnosed with terminal cancer, you look back and you go, all that money and all that time that I invested to earn it, I don't have all those memories. I can never get them back. And it's something that I feel like when you meet that stage in life, you realize just how empty that pursuit of the dollar bill really truly was.
Sorry, man, I cut out.
Oh, no problem. I was saying, it's like you go through and you hit that point where you realize that life is coming to an end. And all those possessions that you work so hard to accumulate, you figure out just how empty they are, because after you're gone, people are going to spend their time fighting over those things you left behind, as opposed to sharing
them out, dude. Mostly throwing them out. The sad thing was, so I had a 35-acre homestead. I had 3 outbuildings, two outbuildings, a detached garage, a shed, a decent sized farmhouse, equipment everywhere. We were running all sorts of different farm stuff. And I was talking to a guy and I was like, okay, I just want to sell this as is. I got junk everywhere. I got valuable stuff here. I got tools, this, that, and like, it's everything you'd need to start plus more. And I was talking to this auctioneer guy and he was telling me how shocked people are when they do estate sales, like when they're getting ready to take off and like RV when they retire, or they're downsizing and going into like a condo, or when grandma gets put in the nursing home and mom and they're doing an estate sale or they pass away. And they're expecting their parents or their own possessions to be, $20,000, $30,000, $40,000. And like, it's usually like $8,000.
Right. It's that inflation rate, right?
Full of $8,000.
Everything depreciates as soon as you put your hands on it.
Yeah.
Except for time.
Yeah.
Time, it never depreciates. It only inflates based on how you use it and the memories that you build with it.
Right, for sure. It makes you think about it. That's something that's coming with my kind of refocusing, is really accounting for all of my time. Like, trying to really focus more and waste less. And I think the only way for me to do that's to account for it, schedule it. And as bad as that sounds, like, even schedule my free time, my throwaway time, which is important too, but schedule everything and really dial in, because I've gotten off track. When we traveled for 3 weeks, the focus was gone. It was all on different stuff. We were actually enjoying our trip, and trying to work as little as possible. But now that I'm back, I think that's a really big factor in productivity too, is really understanding your limitations with time.
It's all about really understanding those limitations and then setting boundaries, but being afraid to not enforce them. Like if something comes up that somebody wants you to do, realizing you're not obligated to it. So you don't even have to say, okay, maybe, and then hope that, the whatever the obligation is falls through. You are allowed to just flat out say, no, I don't want to do that. I'm really not interested in it. So I would rather take those couple hours and invest them where it's meaningful and it's important to me.
Over the last probably 5 years, I think it's probably 5, maybe a little bit more than that, years ago, I read something about the way society has conditioned us to feel selfish when we think about ourselves. Like,
most definitely.
If we put ourselves first. But it was this weird kind of take on it. It was some weird article that was deep on Reddit, one of those nights where you're just sitting there like rabbit holes. And I read this, it was a take on it, and I really don't even know what it was exactly, but it started me down this weird contemplation for probably the last 5 years. And I'm slowly, I go in waves where I'm really good about really taking care of myself, and then my wife, who is an extension of myself. Really, we're a team. We're individuals, but we're very much a team in what we're doing right now because we function as one unit. So really focusing on what's best for me and her and us above everything else. It comes easy for a while, and then there'll be points where I have to make decisions where I have to try to figure out if the person that's going to be affected by this decision understands that point of view. And when you're dealing with people that don't understand that, that's where tension comes. And the ability to deal with that is the stressing point in my journey down understanding this whole phenomenon.
I think you actually just kind of hit the nail on the head about why it's so easy for us to get to compromise and just, say, I know I don't really want to do it, but, I'll be there. And it's that uncomfortable, does that person really understand why I'm turning this opportunity down type thought? Because
Right.
if you think about it, having to explain to my boss, hey, I know that there's business going on. I know you need me. However, spending that, my free time with my kids is a little bit more important to me. So I'm going to pass on putting in this extra couple hours of overtime because,
Right. Work and me. I hit a point where it was like, it's 8 hours and 1 minute. Yeah, I'm done. Like, no.
Right. Exactly.
And for a long time, I was that guy nobody liked at work because everybody would go out for drinks or hang out after work and this or that. And I'm like, I spend 40 hours a week with you. I spend more time with you people than anyone else in my life. And the only reason we're spending time together is because we have the same job choice.
Right.
So I would rather go spend time with my wife, who I like. You all have picked spouses. You obviously picked the wrong one because all you do is complain about your spouses. But no, I don't want to go hang out with you anymore. I'm sorry. That was a very unpopular opinion amongst coworkers at multiple jobs I've had. I'm just like, nah, I'm good. Like I spend time with you enough.
Exactly. And, it's like, it's that trying to understand, but yet trying to kind of influence your decision that makes it a little bit more uncomfortable, like, well, I get it, but, we're running off to do this. And you really should just come with us.
Yeah. It's interesting. It's really, I can see why people that start to figure some different things out, start to really understand how messed up society is. I can see the appeal of withdrawing. I was very withdrawn, or trying to be, with my homestead, and I've really come to the conclusion that community is everything, and it's just you have to find the right community. So you have to delve into different and interact with people and play those games and tiptoe around until you realize you've interacted with the right person, and then you can be yourself. Because there's a lot of strife to be caused when you are yourself around people that don't get it.
I've definitely discovered that, and I've also discovered that one of the best ways while you're trying to evaluate that is how natural it feels. Yeah, when you're working at a job and you have the people that you interact with 9 out of 10, most of the day, those relationships are based on the fact that you're both selling your time. There may be common threads and whatnot, but it also, a lot of the time, you've got to force those conversations. as opposed to when you're out and you just naturally come across somebody. And literally it kind of brings that feeling like that connection, whatever it may be, is been there. So there's no need to force anything. You're just able to be yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if you listen, that's one of the big things to them.
That's
if
a difficult one, right?
If you listen to what they say, and really, if you understand your principles and what the kind of people you want to associate with, and you truly understand like what you believe and who you are, you'll hear it in other people. If you listen to them when they speak about different topics, when they speak about the way they speak about things, you'll pick up the people that are in line with you, and whatever that is. Like, I'm not saying that's maybe a right wing thing or a left wing thing or a no wing thing or outdoorsman or whatever. You key in on different things that are in kind with you if you'll just listen to what people are saying.
That's where we develop that ability to actually evaluate with information, as opposed to, that person's cool, so I'm going to roll with that and only take that one little thing. But if you actually listen to the way somebody discusses something or the subjects that they talk about, you're able to become more informed as to how they actually co-align with your value system. And, when you find that right tribe or that right circle to run with, it's based off of those common threads of the value system that we carry, how we truly value things within our world and how we choose to express it. When you get in tune like that, not only with yourself, but with other people, it's more of like a celebration than it is a chore.
Yeah. Yeah. You make each other better. You feed off each other. And it's funny once you find that tribe, and it's, I've heard it explained. Like, I haven't experienced this in any group that I've been a part of because I kind of roaming around more one-on-one interactions or small group or large events. But some people that I interact with that kind of have get shit done crews in their area, like they get together and do projects together and this or that. What they say is if you get a good core of a couple people together, 2, 3, 4 people, it attracts the right type of people. And when the wrong type of people show up and they're not givers, they're not adding value to the situation and taking value. Like, it's always expected if you bring value, you should take value away, whether that's a new connection or a new skill or money or whatever. When there's people that show up that don't bring value or take more than they give, they end up like being repelled out of the group naturally.
They kind of naturally weed themselves out.
Yeah, because there's always that question. I've been in group interviews with someone that they ask them how they keep that, how they keep people from kind of getting in there and just taking in a situation like that. And she said that they don't feel comfortable.
Right.
Is what it was. They don't feel comfortable.
Absolutely. I want to piggyback all the way to the very beginning, though, because I feel like, with the lifestyle that you're practicing and given the current climate in the world, you mentioned hip camps. I'm sure that a lot of people are still trying to figure out the terminology and whatnot. So I want to kind of dive into that a little bit before we start to wind down here.
Yeah. It's so hip camp is something that it's pretty much exclusively what we use to book campsites. If we're not staying at a kind of a BLM land or public land somewhere for free, we're searching on HipCamp, which is a website. It's basically the Airbnb of camping. So you go there. There's campsites listed. You can sign up as a host. It's a peer-to-peer. It's a peer-to-peer thing. Is basically the best way to explain it. I could sign up if I have 10 acres. I can sign up and let people come and stay at campsites on my property. I photograph them and put a price on it, whatever it is. I might manage a calendar. It's just like a campground, just like an Airbnb. Me as a camper then goes and can browse. I can search different areas. There's maps to search. I can filter down by whether I want to be a tent camper or an RV camper, if I need electric or water or whatever, different filters, how many days I want to stay, how many people I have with, if I have pets. And then it just filters out the available campgrounds in the area. And you can look at them and you book them just like a hotel room. You can get everything, like I said, on our trip from a wide open pasture. So we stayed in a pasture in northeast Colorado. It was basically the very entrance pasture of 600 acres of grazing. Damn, I'm sorry, man.
No problem.
Starlink is just bumming me out tonight. Where did I freeze?
I believe we were talking about the pasture part.
Okay, yeah. So anything from that to like a more traditional campground, where there's RV spots next to each other, camped tent sites around. You can be on somebody's property where they live on site and they interact with you, or you might be on something where you never see anybody. You book it remotely, pay, you show up, you leave, you never even talk to anybody. It's all peer-to-peer reviewed. Like campers leave reviews for hosts, and hosts leave reviews for campers. And man, I've spent over 200 nights on the site. I've hosted on my property in Minnesota before we left, and I think it's a great site. I do consulting for people if they're looking to get set up, if they have property and they want to make a little bit of side income off it. I can help them get set up. I can advise them all the way up into even setting up the website for them on the HipCamp site and managing the back end for them. I'm not really in the business quite yet of doing any on-site stuff. I'm doing one project right now, and I'm not sure if I want to do more of that or just do the consulting part. Or if you're a camper and you want advice on how to use the site, I do free 30-minute consults on my site for anybody, really. But you want to talk HipCamp, I have affiliate links for signing up, which helps our stays, because when you sign up and you use it, I get credit as staying. I don't get cash. I don't get like affiliate cash. I get HipCamp credit. So when I want to go out on a trip, it helps cover my camping fees. So man, it's a great site. I love it. We really prefer the interactions there over like the big stock campgrounds. And you can be picky. Well, depending on the area. If you look in an area, in your area, and you don't see very many, you might want to give me a call and get one put in on your property, because people like me are probably looking to come and stay with you.
I think it was actually such an important thing that you mentioned we overlooked in the beginning, because a lot of the time, a lot of people do think camping is strictly I go to, a regular established campground, like a state facility or, one of these kind of like resort things. And there's so much more to the experience, There is the free state land or the BLM land and things like that, but there are all these other really cool experiences out there that can, in a way, can help you build that tribe.
I've met so many cool people, hosts that were like on site, my wife and I originally really preferred the hands-off sites, the ones, like I said, that you booked it, you emailed through, you got like a code to a outbuilding or whatever, or there was nothing there, and you just pulled, parked, and left. Those were kind of our preference. We've had some stays where we've had some really cool hosts that were really interactive, and I'm kind of warmed up to it a little bit. I see the benefit in it for sure. And my dogs are starting to behave better. Like I have 3 St. Bernards. So any traffic around the camper and they bark a lot, but they're calming down. They're getting more used to people around. So it's making it easier to be in those more congested environments and have more interaction with people. And I mean, meeting those cool people all over the country, staying on their property, seeing what they have going on. Another cool thing that Hip Camp does is they do kind of like, if you've ever heard of Airbnb experiences, where you can go to like somebody's house, and my coffee roaster does coffee class. Like you can stay in his Airbnb and then take a coffee roasting class with him. Hip Camp's starting to do that kind of stuff too, where you can do an add-on of farm tour, or get a dozen farm eggs at your campsite. Or one of the guys we stayed at, like when you checked in, he brought you s'mores for however many people booked the site, like a little package with all the stuff to make s'mores. There's all sorts of add-on stuff like that. And you can filter by the stuff the amenities you want or the activities you want. It's just kind of like a big clearinghouse for everybody to share property and be outdoors, get outdoors and go camping. And it's cheap. That affiliate link I was talking about for the camper, if you use the link and sign up, you get $10 off your first night that you book. And then when you book your first night, I get $10 off a site. The landowner, if you sign up as a landowner through my link, you get $100 when the first person books a site on your property. And then I also get $100 credit for me to stay places and experience more of outdoors. So I think it's a win-win. And you know, I have my issues with them. I'm not gonna like blow all smoke and gravy all over, but like they have some kinks with their site. They have some, you know, everybody does. They're a newer company. They're not brand new, but they're growing. There's some tech issues and some glitchy stuff, but the campsites and the experience are enough to outweigh any glitches for sure.
Well, you know, for me, it's kind of like the idea of just another tool in your toolbox when you're starting to try to get your feet wet and explore new things. You know, it's like a safety net.
Well,
because
here
if
you
you
go.
think if you think about it within today's society, you know, our cell phone is like it's like our safety blanket, right? So you download an app, you're thinking about, hey, I want to go out and I want to camp. I want to experience something a little bit different. I got to do it all on my phone. So it feels a little bit safer, a little bit easier to do, which is really cool.
They do. And people are offering set up campsites. One of the sites I stayed at on this trip. So if you were, you might be able to look in your area if you're in a more urban area. Look out in just outside the suburbs, you know, where it starts to get a little wooded. Look for some hip camps, and people are setting up tents with cots and everything you need. All you do is you roll up with maybe a cooler with some beverages and some food to make. But campsites or hosts are setting up like ready-made sites to go and get outdoors, experience that. Maybe your kid's never been camping and you don't know what you're doing and you don't want to go buy a bunch of stuff. Maybe look in your area. There might be something where you can just go and spend a night out in a tent with your kid.
Simple, easy, and safe, you know? So as we come to the end of this, though, you got to let people know how they can reach out to you. They can find your podcast, all that good stuff.
Oh, sure, man. TheLotsProject.com. That's the LOTS project.com. If you go there, everything is kind of laid out on the homepage. It's getting better. I did put a big grid, though, with hot links to all the kind of different things we got going on. Right there on that homepage, there's a spot to throw an email address in to get a 30-minute chat. I'm looking to chat with anybody that, really anybody. I do the hip camp consulting, like I was saying, help people sign up as campers or hosts. I do beginner cryptocurrency consulting, like how to get started in Bitcoin, how to get started in Bitcoin Lightning, things of that nature, homesteading advice, things like that, problem solving, permaculture advice, things down those lines, or just get to know you, man. I'm really building a book of contacts as I'm traveling the country and when I'm interacting with people virtually and making connections for other people. I love having those 30-minute chats and being able to put somebody in my book, understand what they're working for, what they're working on, their struggles, or maybe their ideal customer. And then 3 days later, talking to someone else and being able to connect those two people. That's really why I enjoy those 30-minute chats. So, man, I encourage anybody to just book a free 30 and chat. Let me know what you got going on. Even if I can't help you with any advice or anything, maybe 6 months from now, I can connect you with somebody that can help you, or you can help them.
Right on. And I'll link in the show notes to this episode to the conversation we shared on your podcast as well.
For sure. Yeah, that was a good chat. I had really good feedback on that, and I think we had some breakthroughs in that one.
I think that's honestly what these conversations about, and I'm glad that we got to hook back up and do a second round. So thanks for doing this.
For sure, man. For sure. I'm sorry you had to wait so long, but I had to take that immaculate journey up to South Dakota and get legal.
Right. It's one of those things, man. They all come together when they're meant to come together. So no worries.
Yeah, I appreciate you. I appreciate you asking too. I thought we had a pretty good wrap there, and you suggested I come on. I was excited. I started digging into your stuff way more, and I was happy to come on for sure. I appreciate you asking.
Well, we'll have to get together again here in a couple of months and catch up again. I'll talk to you soon.
For sure, man.
All right, that is it. That is all. That is the end. We have reached the end of yet another edition of Project Mindfully Outdoors to kick off season number 5. And, like I mentioned way back at the beginning of this episode, there's so much more to this project than just the podcast. If you swing over to projectmindfullyoutdoors.co, you can join me and read along in the wilderness journals as I continue to explore not only the trails that the wilderness has to offer, but also the lessons in life that we can apply to our mindful adventures as we write the story in the journal that is our life. And as far as today's episode goes, this conversation with Brian and the Lot Project, it was something that, takes a little bit of overcoming fear in order to start an adventure like that. Because for most of us, it is a huge shift in what we know, to go from the comforts of modern day living to trying to thrive and make the best of a life on the road. And I feel like it's a lesson that applies to everything in life, because we get so caught up in the comforts of the world around us that it's scary to stretch out and try something new. But it can be done. Each of us have that power and that strength to overcome the things that we fear. And when you do that, you're scaling the mountain to enjoy what's on the other side. So until next time, get out there in the wild. That's where the stillness and the adventure lie. See ya. Hey friend, before we get out of here, I just want to take an opportunity to thank you for making Project Mindfully Outdoors part of your weekly practice. And I want to invite you over to projectmindfullyoutdoors.co. While you're there, sign up for the newsletter and schedule your free first meditation call with me today. So until next time, we'll talk soon.